Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd read chapter 3 of Lake City, Stories from a Country Ass Town. It's available on Amazon if you're interested. And let me just get started. Oh, by the way, this is a new setup, just temporary because it's a little cold and it's a little noisy. So I figured I'd escape to the bedroom. And, oh my gosh, and I forgot to mention this. This bed that I'm in features in this book. Is that not creepy? It does. I've totally forgot that. Okay, well, here we go. You have to stay tuned to find out what happened in this bed. This haunted bed. Chapter 3, Triple H and the Coal Creek War. Concerning the dead, people should say nothing except good. Chilon of Sparta. And that's a Latin quote, and I do believe it's applicable. The history books recount Triple H as an instigator in the Coal Creek War. This war was born from the convict lease system adopted by the state of Tennessee in 1865. The state contracted with Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad for prison labor in the Tennessee mines. In the 20 years from 1870 to 1890, this profitable venture netted almost $800,000, valued at over $7 million today, and helped fill the coffers made bankrupt by the Civil War. Essentially, free miners were forced to compete with convict labor. Free miners were paid a mere 2 cents per ton of coal they loaded, compared to the convict miners, who were simply slaves, many being people of color. To add insult to injury, free miners were not paid in cash, but in scrips, little scrips. They're interesting. You can actually see the little scripts. I believe they have them at the off Lake City. In Lake City, there's a coal mining memorial. I think you can go and look at those scripts too. Sorry, I digressed. But in scripts that were only good at the issuing mine's own commissary, not any other stores. Free miners also had other grievances. No neutral party, weighmaster to weigh the coal, as they felt they were being cheated on their wages. Lack of bathing facilities, and having to pay for all their tools, from shovels to powder, out of their own pockets. Convict miners had an even tougher life. In addition to the stress of worrying about a cave-in or an explosion, they had an individual quota of 5 tons of coal per day. For infractions, the convicts were flogged with leather straps. Stories were told that some worked until they dropped dead and were then summarily buried in mass graves. Neither the convict miners nor the free miners were pleased about the situation. In the spring of 1891 in nearby Briceville, free miners, incensed about the contracts being offered to convicts, went on strike. Actually, the contracts were offered to the state, but I digress. By July, the state, taking advantage of the strike, sent 40 convicts from the Nashville prisons to work the coal mines in Briceville. The state also peremptorily tore up the dwellings of the striking miners and built stockades for the incoming convicts. By mid-July, the free miners, without work, housing, and wildly stirred up, decided to release the convicts from their stockades and sent them backing from whence they came. On July 4th, 1891, the free miners and 500 citizens from Coal Creek, easily 1 out of every 4 residents, took the convict miners and their guards from Coal Creek and Briceville and marched them toward the railroad station headed down to Knoxville. The governor received word of the rebellion and sent 3 companies of militia to the Briceville coal mine and train station to calm the crowd and escort the prisoners back to their stockades. When the train arrived with the militia, the gathered crowd hollered to the authorities that the convicts would not be working their mines. Repeatedly, negotiations began and failed. On July 20th, thousands of free miners came from the hillsides and again took 40 convicts and their guards to Knoxville. A 60-day truce was declared, and then, after everything went sideways, the fighting began. On Halloween night, coal-dusted miners surrounded the stockade, freed the convicts, this time outfitting them in civilian clothing, and torched the place. Between Coal Creek and Briceville, freed sooty convicts scurried for the hills. Many remained uncaptured. The townsfolk decided they'd rather have some grateful convicts loose than their miners be unemployed. On December 1st, the stubborn state of Tennessee determined to keep the profitable convict system churning, rebuilt and restocked the stockades, and again sent in the militia. And this is the part where I'll add a little bit of the family history. Now, in this case, this is where you have nonfiction, and you're making it not into fiction, but you're just kind of blowing up maybe a family member's incident in the war, because that's what humans do. If you have a family member that's involved in something, you're going to kind of magnify it, and it also fits into this book. It fits into the storyline of the other family members. So this is, I'm sorry to digress, but this is how you can have nonfiction and then just kind of make it a little more fictional. According to family history, during what would be named the Battle of Fatal Rock, Triple H was in Briceville on New Year's Day, 1892, in truth, to protect the property of the railroad. However, once General Anderson, commander of the Tennessee State Troops, and 64 soldiers arrived, Triple H, caught up in the spirit of rebellion and radiating authority and self-confidence, leaped upon one of the flat cars when the train stopped, straddled a cannon as if it was a horse, and openly cracked jokes about the soldiers, mocking them to their faces. The assembled crowd roared with laughter, egging him on. General Anderson then rode out with a white flag to parley with the miners. Triple H and a gang took Anderson to a hotel, got him stinking drunk, and then held him prisoner. The story goes that at one point Triple H went outside, climbed on a pile of lumber to better loom above the crowd massed around him, and shouted, "We ought to take that goddamn rebel son of a bitch and hang him." Locally, most of the townsfolk stood the same stance as Triple H on the issue of convict labor. Some thought it was simply wrong to force convicts to work, while others felt the convicts competed unfairly with the free miners, who were deprived of the right to earn a living. No one locally had the nerve to print anything unflattering in the newspapers about Triple H's exploits, as he was a giant among them. 3 war correspondents from the Knoxville Journal, Nashville American, and New York World published a penny paper for the duration of the drama called The Camp Carnes Anti-Bushwhacker. You can't make this shit up. Yet it fell to Harper's Weekly, a highfalutin paper from out of New York, to label Triple H one of the most treacherous cutthroats in the area. Fighting words. In the rain and snow, the troops erected Fort Anderson and dug trenches around it. They fought against the miners and the citizens who were familiar with the mountain trails and passes. The entire 1,200-man Tennessee National Guard was sent to Anderson County to get things under control, as this was the first armed rebellion against the state since the Civil War. General Carnes arrived with more guards, and they then held 200 citizens under arrest in return for Anderson, who was finally freed. While 300 miners were indicted for the uprising, laughably only 2 were convicted. After a few days, Triple H was captured, allegedly hiding in a pile of leaves, as if a pile of leaves could cover a 250-pound man, and detained in a little Briceville church. Some disgruntled soldiers who he had viciously teased decided to exact their own revenge by taking Triple H to the nearest grove for hanging. You know, you gotta wonder, like, what tree is gonna hold a 250-pound man, but okay, it happened, so okay. This plan was foiled by a level-headed lieutenant named Fife, who ordered Triple H back into custody and the rope removed from his neck. It didn't even leave a burn. Rumor ran that once the noose was around his neck, Triple H consented to turn state's evidence against the fellow riders to avoid hanging, or that he revealed the location of outlaw stills. Still, no one knew how he avoided the noose, but they all had an opinion about it behind closed doors. The Knoxville Tribune wrote, quote, "Observation has created the belief that there are more glib, industrious liars to the square yard in that region than anywhere on earth." And you know what, Knoxville Tribune? I think you're right. I think you're right. I love that. When I got to diverge again. When I read that in some old microfiche, I busted a gut laughing because they had some greenhorn come down. I don't remember where somebody came from, but I think they were writing for the Tribune, but they weren't from Knoxville. And they were writing just with their mouth agog about all the characters in the town and all the things that had gone on in this war. And yeah, they were quite taken aback by all the industrious liars. Decades later, after Triple H's death from old age and battle scars, his handsome middle son Robert Harrison, aged 33, took over the maintenance of much of the family's holdings, land, and property near the University of Tennessee, as well as their antebellum family home in Coal Creek, nicknamed the White House. The White House was renamed Harrison Inn in 1933 when it was partitioned and partially rented out for a few years to some of the Tennessee Valley Authority workers who came to erect the nearby Norris Dam. The United States government built the model town of Norris along with it. In 1939, Robert, then a state senator, sponsored a bill to change the name of the city from Coal Creek to Lake City. The concept behind the name change, let me just tell you what this is, because this gets people going even to this day. The concept behind the name change was that the new Norris Dam 5 miles away would lure tourists who would then stay in their rustic town attractively named Lake City. Sounds feasible, doesn't it? Polled at the time about the name change, the townsfolk of Coal Creek grumbled and mumbled behind their hands, but generally favored it 2-1. A few older folks attempted to block it, but failed. Coal Creek officially became Lake City. While there are numerous streams in the area, technically there's no lake in sight. Some folks still bitch about it. And see, that's the end of Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is, I would say, 99% nonfiction. You got 1% fiction, and that's generally just name changes. So, the folks are dead, but I still change the names of family members. And again, when you're telling a story and you've got a war and you've got a family member that's participated in that war, when you're telling it through the lens of your own family, you're going to blow it up. If you go now into the history books and look for the guy that straddled the cannon and mocked the troops and took Anderson hostage, or whatever way you want to look at it, it's going to be a little fleece fart in the history of the big picture. But if you're going to tell it through your family's lens, you're going to blow it up. So when I did a lot of research at the East Tennessee Historical Society, was researching my different family members, I did find a lot of accounts of Triple H, and the next one would always be funnier than the last one. So he was a gift that kept on giving. And also I am related to the guy that did get the name changed from Coal Creek to Lake City, and so you can hate on me all you want. You know what, guys? Now I'm not your problem. Now Rocky Top is your problem. But yeah, it's a long story. Now the city's name is Rocky Top, so yeah. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please click the little like button and ring that subscribe bell, and then anytime I do an upload, you'll just simply get a notification. So I hope you're having a wonderful 20, and take care.